What's up, everybody? My name is Counselor Charli here on the We Just Talking podcast. I'm going to be dropping some gems about mental health, some common misconceptions, and everything else in between. I have fellow co-hosts with me, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Holiday.
I'm Vivi.
All right, and I guess we'll just kick it off. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't know is what is therapy. So I guess I'll just start off by asking you guys if you have any therapy experience, and if you don't, what do you think therapy is? And if you do, what did you think it was before you joined? Whoever wants to go, just go.
I don't mind starting. My first experience is being in therapy, and as one can imagine, it feels invasive. You don't know how to start. You don't feel comfortable talking to a random person, but then you have to build that rapport, and then you feel more comfortable. And now I'm to the point where I can't let go of my therapist, which is another segue we can get into, because then they become like family, or the one person you talk to. Then it's hard to leave, but especially when you want to grow. But now I could say an out realm experience, because I'm training to be a type of therapist. I'm doing art therapy and counseling, and that's my graduate studies right now.
Okay, that's beautiful.
That's dope.
If you don't mind me asking, are you currently in school?
Yes.
Where do you go?
I'm in an online program in Edinburgh University at Penn West.
All right.
Represent.
Alrighty.
And my degree is completely online, but that doesn't stop us, because more and more therapy is becoming online. So even though you have that screen as kind of a setback, I'm going to get to take a class that shouldn't be a setback, just because you can't get the personal input from being person to person. That could also help with people who don't like to be in person. If you got to call somebody, you may not want the what is it? The face-to-face interaction, but that could still be helpful to you. So I get to take a class about that, because I was afraid, like, if I don't get to see somebody, how do I play off of that? How do I show that empathy through my verbal reactions, through my physical reactions, that I could show them that I care, like I'm listening? But if like things like BetterHelp is working for people, then we can make our way with that too.
I agree. What do you guys think?
Well, personally, I've never been in therapy per se, but I've been in marriage counseling. So that's pretty much, I know that was someone trying to help bond the unity of our marriage versus just working on me. Like, I personally think I'm great, so I don't know if I personally need therapy. I don't know, but I'm an open book. I have no quarrels with talking to strangers, talking to people, even sharing my stories when it comes to like kind of shedding some light on what people might feel like. I was scared to tell that, but until you said something about it, I feel more willing to kind of share my story, because you were so willing to share yours. So, I mean, I personally never been to therapy. I mean, what about you, Ryan? Have you thought about therapy?
I've never been in therapy. It's definitely been something that I've been considering. Just hearing good things about it, how, like she was saying, how a therapist has, become somebody that's like a family member to her. And just having somebody that you would be able to open up to and help you work through situations in life.
All right, so question, is there any like particular stage where you feel as though, all right, you need to go to counseling or therapy, or is this automatic, like, okay, everyone needs a therapist?
So I'm going to say this. Everyone does need a therapist.
Okay.
Everyone needs a therapist. I'm a therapist, and I have a therapist. And I've had one since I've started providing therapy. But two things. The first one that I heard, you mentioned it, Ryan and Vivi, you both mentioned the family aspect. And I think that's one of the main themes that gets misconstrued in counseling, only because, right? Yes, we love our clients. We want to help our clients. That's our goal. But when you start to look at your therapist like family, it can cross some boundaries. So it's like, okay, if I call you, if I text you because I really need you, but I don't have a session and you don't answer, am I not your family anymore? Are you going to stop showing up to session? So like that little piece, I tell people to be very careful with, only because once you get into therapy, these people are revealing their deepest, darkest secrets, desires, what have you. And it's no telling what someone would do if they don't know what you would do with that information. So you kind of got to have that standard, like, okay, yes, you're my client and I'm here to help you grow and guide you. However, Like, I'm not your mom, I'm not your dad, I'm not your sister, I'm not your brother. And you got to kind of have to make that clear, because you'd be surprised some of the things you run into. And back to your question, could you reiterate it for me again?
Well, I was saying, does everybody? I think I said like, does everybody need
Yes.
photography? I mean,
Of
therapy.
therapists. They do. They do. And here's the thing, right? Think about all the people who live in their own world. Think about, here's me in my house, here's you in your house, and there's everyone else in their house. We're all raised differently, so we all have different worldviews. And when you have a different worldview from than everyone else, the way you look at something is not the way that they will look at it, right? So think about the people who go their entire lives with no one ever sharing a different perspective with them, right? We would deem that person a narcissist if they go around, like their view is the only view and what they think is the only thing that matters. But in reality, they just haven't been exposed to any other view. And that's where therapy comes into place.
So, all right, so what if a person grew up in a melting pot? You know what I mean? Like interracial family. They have, siblings that are Jewish. Like they have all these different blends of families melting together and had a pretty good childhood. You know what I mean? Like at what point do you really say, oh, you still need therapy? But they feel as though they got a great job. They handling conflict very well. So at what point will you convince that person who feel like they got it together that they still need counseling?
Now, what person are we talking about? Are we talking about a person of color? Or are we talking about a non-person of color? Are we talking about a
We can
black
talk about
person?
a male person of color owning their own business, could be, entrepreneur, CEO or whatever, has a family and grew up with, these dynamics of, black and white in their family, Jewish, like they grew up with all these different melting pots, and they went to a public school and they also went to a really good college. You know what I mean? All these levels of, okay, they look like to me a very well put together person. Even talking to them, they able to handle themselves very well in conflict. You know what I mean? So at what point you just like, oh, you still need counsel? Like, but they had it together though, don't they?
So you kind of just answered it. You just listed like 1,000 different things within one person, right?
Right.
Which gives them a lot of intersectionality.
Okay.
When you have a lot of intersectionality, you're walking in a lot of different rooms with a lot of different versions of power that you may not be familiar with. You may walk in some rooms and you're the boss. You may walk in some rooms and you're the novice. And so with that being said, that person still needs therapy too, because does that person know who they are? Just because they're diverse and they're well-rounded, that's a lot of external factors going on. They've been to public school, they've been around this culture and that culture. So when that person lays down at night, does that person know who they are? Like, can you say that they can be amazing, they can be a business owner, they can have 1,000 degrees, but is that person a collective of the universal consciousness, or is that person their own being? And that's what it's about. Just because you don't have any immediate or acute presenting concerns doesn't mean that you don't have the day-to-day mental health issues just like everyone else.
Right.
But it does look differently, unfortunately, across races, because depending upon the experiences that you have when you're out in society, that affects your worldview. And so if you haven't had many experiences where someone's telling you you're wrong, or someone's telling you you're not good enough, or anything of that nature, then you may not be able to see what other people can see. And that person needs therapy the most. And the person that honestly is the reason for them needing therapy, or the environment, they need it too, because how many of us talk to ourselves or call our friends or our family when we have an issue? They're not clinically trained. They can support you, they can advise you, but a therapist is not even supposed to give you advice. They're just supposed to guide you.
I have a question too, as you're talking about that. So, your clients that you have, what are some of the challenges that they have, of accepting that they need a therapist?
So
If they have shared that with you.
my clients, honestly, and I'll speak for the majority, they didn't have any issues. My clients knew they needed therapy. Majority of my clients, I have a niche. My specialty is sex therapy and gender affirming therapy. So majority of my clients come to me knowing that they needed therapy, but they're so used to self-sabotaging that they were like steady putting it off, or it was a thing where it was like, okay, it's not the right time, or I don't have transportation. But now, like Vivi stated earlier, telehealth is a huge thing. I do so many telehealth sessions, like way more than I would ever do in person. And so now that people can go from the comfort of their home, my clients, when they came, they were just like, oh, I knew I needed therapy. I just didn't know what therapist to go to, or I just didn't know if I should, talk to a stranger, or maybe there's a financial barrier. Like there's a million different ways that it could go.
Right.
Well, what about spirituality? Like a lot of people say, well, I could just go to church. I'm gonna read the Bible. I'm good. I don't need that therapy stuff. Like I'm good with just going to church.
That's a good one. That's a good one, and that's particularly a good one because a pastor is not clinically trained. A pastor is spiritually trained. He may have an advanced degree in theology, but he's still not clinically trained.
But then that guidance, though, like you were mentioning that we're being guided. I mean, therapist is to help you guide you to the. I think to the question, to the answer that you probably are looking for. But the Bible and your pastor or whoever is also there to try to guide you to be the better version of yourself as well.
Absolutely, and I'll give you the extreme distinct difference between the two.
Okay.
Your pastor is going to guide you and counsel you, and he's going to give you advice. He's going to tell you what you should and should not do because it's based off of spirituality and it's based off of whatever religion that you're in. So those are what they deem facts, but the rest of the world, we consider it private logic. So those people, that's what they believe. So they're going to give you right and wrong. A therapist doesn't do that. A therapist helps guide you to your own conclusion. I will never, ever tell a client, oh, you're right, or oh, you were wrong, or I agree with you. Never. I can offer validation and normalize and empathy to my client without agreeing with them. And the biggest piece of it is if I'm agreeing with you and I'm supposed to be your therapist, I'm essentially telling you what to do. And how is that helping you? Religion can tell you what to do because there are specific rules. There's no specific rules with mental health. It's honestly whatever works for you. Does that make sense?
It does.
So while you may have your spiritual leader and they may be phenomenal, but what does your spiritual leader know about theories? What does your spiritual leader know about your existential crisis? What is he going to say? Oh, just get on your knees and pray. Okay, that's fine temporarily, but what about a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now?
Any thoughts on that, V?
For me, then it goes to the additive extreme of they also cannot prescribe. Sometimes your spiritual leader saying like understanding that some medication is also important, that you cannot unfortunately pray a bad anxiety attack away. But what you can do, like I've actually heard this from my own therapist when it's called the let go and let God. But it's what I hear about, like if you're able to calm yourself down, that's when I need that advice. Like sometimes if you can't, what's the point of getting upset over something that you can't control? To me, that helps spiritually when I'm like, I can't control this. This is not my, and it's not my fault. So I gotta let it go.
That's my go-to, by the way. Yeah, like if I
There
can't
you
control
go.
it, so I'm not gonna stress about it if I can't control it. So
On the days that I'm having a panic attack, it's my therapist who's gonna get me out of it. Or it's somebody that I trusted, my support network. That's somebody I trust to talk to get me out of a bad mental state. That I can't even think. It's a grounding, a different level of grounding. So the spiritualness is on one end, and then it's the actual physical of I need something right now, but I can't listen to even complete spiritual reasons. Something, even just a calm shoulder tap, something that brings you down. Usually, at least that's what I'm starting to get trained into, the counseling aspect of grounding people in the moment.
Yep. Yeah, we at my practice we call it shift. So it's essentially just you like recognizing that you're in a moment and so that you can ground yourself. And I think the common theme that you were all just speaking about is regulating. Like knowing like spirituality can regulate you. It can bring you down, but is spirituality going to set you up with the tools that you need? No, spirituality is almost like a temporary coping mechanism, right? But if you want permanent like change or permanent growth, then you have to be able to regulate and monitor and manage manage those triggers that cause you to regulate. You get what I'm saying? Like if I know that when I go here, this is when my anxiety is at its peak, then I know that there has to be some interventions in place if I have to go there. Otherwise, what's going to happen? I'm not going to be regulated. I'm going to essentially be out of control.
Understand.
Right.
So at any point do you graduate therapy? Like do you like you can say, okay, we've been doing this for a while, I'm good. Or is it
Absolutely.
Yes.
okay? Because I heard different things where people say, oh no, it's forever. You always have your therapist. Like why?
No.
Like at one point, like are they not doing their job where I'm not well after 15 years?
So, go ahead.
I think graduation is a different type of term, but therapy will always exist. Your definition of therapy is different. Like what I'm doing, art therapy is one of the most non-invasive. I don't involve talk. I involve hand movements. Sometimes I have a lot of non-verbal clients. They can't talk to me. They're not ready to talk to me. Two different levels, but whether they proceed on to CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, or they're fine with finding something meticulous to do that gets them through their day. But as an example of that'll help them forever, but it's not necessarily talk therapy, but it's therapeutic to them. So the therapy aspect doesn't have to leave you. You just find it in different ways.
I definitely have graduated a few people for sure. What it boils down to is it looks a little differently than obviously like a high school or college graduation. And just to simplify it, diagnoses can be pervasive, meaning you can be diagnosed with a mental health disorder or concern that is going to be with you for the rest of your life, but that doesn't mean you need psychotherapy for the rest of your life. And so I've had clients who you create goals. And once you fully met your goals, I'm not going to grasp for straws to find something else wrong with you. And so what I do, we discharge them, and I discharge them without prejudice, meaning at any time that they would like to come back, and because there's a new issue, they can come back. But as of now, you graduated from these goals.
Okay.
And that's how some people end up with clients for 10 years. That doesn't mean they've been consecutively seeing them for 10 years. That just means that off and on through life, this is the person that they go to for their clinical experience.
Okay.
Question. Well, so some people say that there are some good therapists out there and some bad therapists. What defines like either one of those?
Oh, that's an easy one. A good therapist, three things. A good therapist, number one, does not give advice. A good therapist, number two, comes into a session with no bias whatsoever, meaning that they are a blank slate.
Okay.
And a good therapist asks questions when they are unsure of things. So if they're unsure if they cause harm to someone or that, things didn't go the way they thought it would, they seek out a supervisor or someone higher than them, because it's all about competency. And then a bad therapist, just go on psychologytoday.com and look at all the different people that are either in jail or about to go to jail. And the number one thing that makes someone, and I'm putting air quotes on this, is because we don't think about this, is therapists that are overcharging.
Okay.
My mind was going somewhere. I was thought like, manipulation of like,
No.
okay.
Finances, therapists that are charging insurance for seeing a client 5 times, although they only have seen them twice. Saying that they saw the client for a 60-minute session and they only saw them for 30. And then eventually insurance agencies, they catch on to this. And then they come and get you, and then you go to jail. And I used air quotes because we wouldn't typically we're thinking like bad therapists, bad therapy.
Yeah.
But therapy is so gray, you can't really go, oh, that's a bad therapist. You can go, that's not the therapist for me.
That's exactly what I was gonna bring that to. Like, if you don't feel like it's a good fit, like they were nice, they were pleasant, but after 3 or 4 sessions, you're just not feeling it with them, then that's just not the therapist for me. Or to me, a bad therapist is also breach of confidentiality. That is like a big hit or miss.
Okay, so that leads
That's
me
a
to
horrible
ask.
therapist.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's horrible. If you repeat anything that your clients tell you with like information where someone could identify them.
Okay. That leads me to ask then, what am I asking? So somebody that's getting therapy should be able to see progress after some sessions, or doesn't always work out that way either.
It
But they
depends
should
on
be
the
getting.
person.
Yeah, it depends on the person.
It can be, you have some people, and I think Vivi touched on this earlier, who literally just come for talk therapy. Like they will literally just completely make up a goal that they don't even care about, just because they're literally coming to you to talk. Because that is how they regulate, that's how they cope, that's how they grow in their mind. So you can have a client like that, and for like 8 months, right? And then you'll tell them, like, okay, we're at a point where I'm getting ready to discharge you. And then they'll be like, oh no, I'm so depressed. Oh no, I just had a panic attack yesterday, and everything would have been fine before that, but they just want to keep talking.
Okay.
And so it really all depends.
I'd also like to add, like rewinding about what you mentioned about graduation. When you feel like you need to graduate, I'll give my own personal experience. That point of when you've reached not boundary crossing, but you got a little too comfortable with your therapist, meaning it became talk therapy, but you don't realize until after the session, you're like, I didn't get anything accomplished. But that was a nice conversation, but I could do that with with an actual family member or somebody, my best friend. When I feel like I'm not getting enough anymore, that's when you feel like you graduated, or you need to find someone else has more specified qualifications, like DBT, something of higher therapy, or maybe lower. But that graduation from one therapist, sometimes you have to realize that, or if they're like it was mentioned, you got to realize that, or if you're just there to talk, then you understand that. But then are you lying to yourself? Like, I'm still depressed,
Right.
but I want somebody to talk to.
All right, well, I have a question for both you, for Vivi and Charli. Like, when you're starting, like, going through school and like learning, do they like require you to get a therapist? That's why I was.
So my school did not. I was not required to have a therapist. I actually didn't get it.
So interesting.
Yeah, no, because you gotta. So I did an accelerated program.
Okay.
And so it's 2 years. And versus most programs are 3 years, and 4 years they're a little longer. So we weren't required to have a therapist. We were required to take certain classes and attend certain events. So I had to go and immerse myself like in different cultures. I had to go find like a church that I would never go to, like that completely, worship something else. Like I had to immerse myself in different areas where I could essentially break down any biases that I did have, if I did have any, about that culture. But I didn't have to have a therapist at all.
For my program, I am, because I'm also part-time. I'm a part-time student, so mine's going to be 2.5 to 3 years. But for admission, you are required to have at least 3 months of therapy. Like, I had to have my therapist sign a waiver and send it to the office.
I do want to rewind real quick on something that you said, and I think it's important to touch on. Vivi, you said, yeah, when I can just, you were using an example, and you were like, someone saying, well, I could just talk to a friend. Essentially, most people are like, why would I pay you to talk to you when I can call up a friend? And literally the easy answer to that is, what clinical experience does your friend have that's going to help you long term? Your friend knows how to make you feel good. While you're on the phone, they can come see you, bring you your favorite snacks, talk to you, and calm you down for the moment. But can your friend talk to you about pervasive issues? Can your friend tell you what to do if you're currently having a panic attack? Can your friend help you unpack your trauma? If I bring up shadow work, who's going to look around like this? Does your friend know what shadow work is? Does anybody here know what shadow work is?
I do know what shadow work is.
Okay, you guys don't. Would you like to share, or would you like me to share?
I'd like to hear your input on it
So-
first, and then I'll share mine.
Shadow work is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's you sitting down, and it's deep introspection. So you're literally going to the crevices of your mind, like as deep as you can go, for those ways in which you self-sabotage, those ways in which you purposely do things to hurt yourself, and you don't realize you're doing it until you do that shadow work and literally realize that you're doing it. So like the person who has gone 8 years and they're like, oh, no one wants to date me, I can't get in a relationship. this person doesn't ever leave the house, right? And at some point, you have to do that as shadow work and talk to yourself and think about the ways in which that you are enabling yourself to also not find a partner. And so how is your family member or your friend going to help you? Because the only person that can do the shadow work is you. You can't talk to someone else about your shadow work because it's literally your darkest spaces, and no one else is going to know about that but you.
But you.
And for me, I was going like on like the definition term, because that's also it's very spiritual in that practice of, you know how a shadow walks behind you, that's still a part of you. It's where the sun goes, it's still there, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. You have to work with it to better yourself.
Yeah, I love that. That's like the spiritual definition, because that's literally what it is. Because those spaces is the things. It's just like when someone says, "Oh, I'm 31," or "You're 31. You shouldn't act like that anymore." And people forget. Yes, I'm 31, but I'm also 30. I'm 29. I'm still 5. I still like the X-Men. I still turn on my cartoons and eat my Apple Jacks when I'm feeling that way. So I'm not just 31. I'm also 5. You get what I'm saying? And that's about the shadow following you. Those are those things, those spaces. It's going to follow you for the rest of your life until you unpack it. And even after you unpack it, you don't forget it. You're healed from it, essentially.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, that all sounds really good. I don't feel like I need it though. I mean, realistically, I think I'm 44, and I think I've came to the awareness around 30, where I was going through the spiritual journey, because I feel like I was never really getting the answers I was looking for in church, in regards to, all right, something bad happens to somebody, like to somebody bad, they were getting punished. But something happens bad to somebody that's good, they're being tested. So that right there kind of put my mind in a different space. And I started just developing and reading on self-help books and different things of that nature, and kind of got into this, to me, awareness where I know where, you know, my attitude's getting a little too high. Let me bring myself down. Like, I'm doing this, you know, let me stop. Like, I know how to, I've learned that I'm an intuitive empath. I've discovered that. I've actually discovered that's who I am. In regards to, I can feel that person's emotions. I can feel my emotions. I know exactly how to react in certain situations where I'm not overreacting. I'm not underreacting. I'm seeing what it is, and I'm validating what that person's saying, but not absorbing that negative energy into my space. So to me, I feel as though I'm good.
Can I challenge you?
Please
Can I
challenge me.
respect?
Yes.
And this is literally like all due respect. This is
Yeah.
no shade. This is purely just a challenge, because I'm curious as to how you're going to answer this. So what about the things, because self-awareness is only that. What you're aware of as far as that day within yourself.
Right.
What about the things that you're not aware of? So hear me out, right? What about the things that bother you and you don't know that they bother you? And I'll give you an example, and you don't know why they bother you. You just feel it, right? And you think it's normal. What about the things that you've normalized and you've just convinced yourself no one else, you're not going to be able to point that out? And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I had to explain someone, and hear me out, because people are going to be like, what? But we just talking, so I'm going to keep it
Please
real.
go for it.
All my life, I always would see, I never had a problem seeing a black woman with a white man. But anytime I seen a black man with a white woman, I would be triggered. And I never knew why, because I'm all for love. I'm like, I have no respect of person, like no color or anything. And I'm like, what is this that I'm feeling? And then one day I was like, you're bothered. For some reason, you don't like seeing this. And literally maybe like 4 years ago, I had to have a conversation with myself, and I sat down, and this is that shadow work, and I said, why am I bothered by seeing this black man with this white woman but not the other way around? And I'm gonna tell you why. It's not because of their skin color. It's because of, in my experience, whenever I have seen a black woman with a white man, if I ask her how she got with him or how she chose him, she does not go into, because black men just weren't good enough. In my experience, black men just weren't good enough, or a black man couldn't make me happy, or black men wouldn't stop cheating. She doesn't go into that. She just talks about how he treats her so kind. and he showed her something different. She loves him, right? But in my experience, whenever I would see a black man with a white woman, even friends that I've had, and I would say, how did y'all meet, or how did y'all get together, whatever the case may be, they will always, somehow it'll always end up with, oh, black girls never wanted me, black girls are too much, black girls, it's like a black girl hate parade. So I don't care about their skin color, but it bothers me because when I see them together, that's the only thing that comes to mind. And I had to do that shadow work to heal from that, because that's not the case for every relationship. But for a long time, I had no idea why that bothered me. And it was just a little bother, not nothing that would rule my day or anything, just a little like, I noticed that. I don't know how I feel about that. And those moments are why we all need therapists,
But that was
because
your
no
shadow.
one can point that out.
But that was your shadow moment. Like, if you actually learned about, like right now, learning about that shadow moment, I'm like, okay, I can do that shadow moment and reflect and not have that other person tell me this is what you need to do, because I've already learned from this circle.
But what if you haven't seen it? What if there's like, think about the people that we know on an everyday basis that has what we consider to be issues, and they don't know it. And when you bring it up to them, they're like, what?
Like
They
it
looking
took
at you
you
like,
to realize that pretty much yourself. Nobody else opened that up, like, helped you understand that better.
no, everyone
Okay,
did.
gotcha.
No,
Oh,
everyone did.
gotcha, okay,
Everyone
yeah.
did. I have a village, and where I am today is not where I was 5 years ago. And what I know today is not what I knew 5 years ago. I'm only here today because of my village. So this is not one of those.
Excellent.
I'm not one of those people that got it out by myself through the mud, through the trenches. Absolutely not. I'm one of those people that I had a lot of help, a lot of opportunities. My life has been very advantageous, when it comes to like my personal life and my career. So no,
Absolutely.
I got here from everyone.
Myself as well. Like, I haven't done anything like on my own as well. I kind of like just missed that part of the village part when you were like explaining that, but that's good though.
Yeah, it makes a difference because I have so many therapists in my family that come before me. So this is not a new journey for me. I have a cousin who I've been like this since we were in diapers, and she's 3 years older than me, but she's 8 years ahead of me as a counselor. So I always lean on her. I have a mentor, Lena Queen. She's phenomenal. She's a clinical sexologist. She's the best freaking woman in the world. And literally, I go to her. That's my therapist. I'm with you. I don't feel like I need one, but guess what? Every time I have a session, she shows me exactly what I did. And I promise you, when I'm going into a session, I'm like, I don't need this. I'm capable of doing this. And by the end of every session that I have with her, I'm like, dang, I needed this. And we don't realize it. Allow me to refer you to someone, and I guarantee you, and attend 3 sessions, and I guarantee you, I can put money on the line that you will come back and you will say, you were right. There's so many things that we don't know about ourselves. There's 60-year-olds, 70, 80 still learning things about themselves, but a lot of times other people can point it out quicker than we can.
I get that.
May I have a turn of point in,
Yeah, sure, please.
in challenging? It's a question of absolute care. And I speak from a young lady who grew up around predominantly Black and Latino men. Even to this day, y'all don't get to feel. Y'all don't get to feel, and are still to this day, I feel like, not allowed to feel emotions, certain emotions other than happiness and anger.
True.
In your shadow moment, by the way, I'm adopting that from you. I like that word, shadow moment. If something doesn't go your way, but you feel like it's your fault, or like you could have done something to prevent it, or somebody angered you, somebody upset you, do you feel like you shut down in that moment? Or do you feel like, maybe even if you need some time by yourself, do you express that in a way that you feel healthy, or do you bottle it?
Well, going through marriage counseling, I did learn how to speak. Yeah, I did go. I did go to things. So I'm not saying I'm completely oblivious. But that's kind of bonding two different people, two different entities to one world. My world, I think I'm okay in my world, but being in a part of somebody else's world, completely different. But learning how to say, hey, you know what? This conversation is getting a little escalated. Let me take a step back, please. Yeah, I'm having that conversation versus blowing up, yelling, or just storming out. Giving that permission, like, please. Right now, we're having a conversation. Give me 10 minutes. I'll be right back. We can finish it. I just need a moment for myself. I've learned that through counseling, through marriage counseling and stuff like that. So there are moments where I've definitely learned some things. So, yeah.
Do you think that, since I've heard you say multiple times now that you don't think you need therapy, so who do you think needs therapy?
Oh man, I think people who intentionally, I like most likely might not have friends that they can talk to, just like the surface level, that surface level there, as well as people who don't know how to manage certain triggers that they might have. Like there are people that they might have had trauma, they don't even know they went through a trauma. Even men who didn't even know that they might have been through trauma, that might have been sexually abused by a woman, and don't think that they were sexually abused. And they might think, oh yeah, I've had sex with an older woman, not knowing that no, that's trauma. Like people that don't know those certain things, that are going through those steps, that just don't know how to maneuver. Like, no, I'm okay. I had sex with an older woman when I was 9 years old. No, that's not right. You don't know that's not right because no one told you that that's not right. You know what I mean? Things of that nature, they might need to have that type of guidance because they just don't know how to maneuver their emotions. Me, it took me years. Like for one, I never grew up with peer pressure. That's one step. Peer pressure was never my thing. I grew around people that sold drugs, that did all these other things. I was cool being a nerd. I was okay. I loved being a nerd. I was in my martial arts gi on my porch doing my martial arts. I was okay with that. I didn't let nobody peer pressure me into that. Years later, I learned I had a stuttering problem. My dad told me like, hey, you need to take your time. Think about what you're about to say, then say it. So there's different hurdles that I've learned and overcome. I never backed down from fear in regards to stage fright. I was a stand-up comedian. But guess what? I went up there with stage fright, but I used that. I'm scared. I used to always have dreams of drowning, but yet I would go on a cruise. I would dump in the deepest water. I didn't let those fears stop me. So to me, I'm like, it's easier said to do for other people. Other people might not be able to say, well, I'm scared of spiders, I'm gonna just go grab me a spider. No, you might have some trauma you might need to work through, or that might not just be your thing. I've slowly and gradually worked through different fears of my own, merely because I just feel as though, in some ways, I felt as though I had nobody else to help me go through those. So I'm like, I'm gonna go through these fears on my own, whether it's jumping in the deepest ocean or doing this with fear all in my heart, but not letting that stop me.
So what do you think about the person who, because from what I'm getting from your perspective, is that you kind of deem the person who needs therapy, their presenting concerns are usually a little bit more acute. They don't have to be so severe, but they have to be at least a little acute.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you think about the gentleman who is just unfulfilled in his career and he's just unhappy, and his unhappiness from his career is trickling down into other avenues of his life, so he's just going to therapy to get support?
I was that guy too.
But does he not need it?
He most likely would need it.
Now, why would he need it versus...
If he don't understand why he's going through that trials and tribulations, if he don't understand what he needs to do, for me, I actually went through that avenue of making good money. I was a salesperson. I was missing Ryan. I've been in that area where I'm chasing that dollar bills, but I wasn't fulfilled. Knowing that my passion was photography, videography, acting, all that other stuff, I'm willing to take a step back in that payment, willing to get through those hardships of, might not be able to pay my bills right now because I'm focused on that dream. A lot of people are scared to take that risk. So if you're scared to take that risk, why are you scared to take that risk? What other areas can you do to kind of lessen that blow of taking that risk? I took that risk. I was almost making 6 figures at one point at different jobs, but I left those so I know that I could be happier being a photographer and almost broke because I knew that was making me happy.
But then what happens when, because I love that for you, number one.
Thank you.
But what happens when that person knows what's wrong? They know why they're feeling that way, but they're still feeling it. And they don't know how to get rid of the feelings on their own. Like, they know why the feeling's there, but they can't control, they can't regulate the feeling, they can't manage it on their own. So why does that person need it versus why can't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and figure it out?
Well, like you said, if they don't know. If they don't know...
They do know.
Oh, they do? Okay.
They do know, but they can't control the feeling. Because, it's somatic. Like, anxiety, you can feel that. Anxiety shows up in my stomach, and my fingers, and my shoulders, and my neck.
Right.
You can feel it. So what about that?
Well, to me, from what you're saying, I would just think that person needs therapy, even though if they know. But, like, I know that I need to get in this car and go this way, but I'm so terrified to get behind this wheel. I need somebody to help guide me. I need somebody to help drive me there. I need to be a passenger for this moment while they take me down this journey that I need to take. So even though they might know that this particular thing triggers me, I know that I need to do this, but a therapist has that tools for that person. Like going to the hospital. You go to the hospital because you have this illness. I know I got a cold. I know I need to get better. I have a virus inside of me, but I know that this specialist at this hospital needs to fix me. They have the right tools to help fix me. They have the right education to fix me. Same thing as a church. I don't think church is meant for everybody, but I meant for those people that need that extra push, that extra care. So that person has that particular tool to help them through that spiritual guidance, just like a doctor for that medicalness, that therapist for that other anxiety that other person doesn't know how to manage. Now you have a few handful of people that, yeah, I know what I'm going through. I can handle it. Give me a couple of days. Give me a couple hours. Let me read a book or so. Let me meditate on it, because I learned through that. Just like therapists go through their schooling, they go through these different tests. Why I couldn't go through those tests in my life, but able to be aware, like, oh, you know what? This helped me, which is not toxic. I didn't have to smoke. I didn't have to drink. I didn't have to hurt anybody. But I'm learning. I'm self-aware. I'm learning how to manage through this. So there might be a handful of people, not a lot. I'm quite sure this world, you might have more people that need therapists than don't need therapists.
Oh, absolutely.
I
1,000%. Absolutely.
But you gotta agree. There might be a handful of people that, no, I'm okay.
I think it all depends on like your version of need. So what I like to say is, because I do make it a point to not say that people need therapy, even my clients. I say that I think that you could benefit, or we all could benefit. I think everyone on this planet
actually is a good
could
term.
benefit
like
from
that.
therapy.
Right.
However, like to say someone needs it,
You can kind of come off
Exactly.
yes,
a little judgmental.
yeah, not kind of. It is because, especially as a non-therapist,
Right.
you saying that someone needs therapy. Who are you? Like, who are you, like, to point out, my presenting concerns and say that I need this? You're not clinically trained. But even for a therapist to say that someone needs therapy, it's a little narcissistic, because we're not perfect.
You don't need any type of inflection. Just the phrase "you need a therapist" written out. It's
an insult.
It's insulting.
That makes so much more sense than anything, because as I would be so contradicting, throwing out, oh, but this therapist helped me with this, but I don't need a therapist. You know what I mean? So I know there's certain things that I've benefited from, and I was aware.
But what if that's coming from somebody that has had that experience of being around you for such a long time and knows that that's something you're in need of? Would that be more of a realistic thing? Like a friend that's mentioning that to you, right?
I think still the terminology of how to deliver it.
That's
Right?
And then also it's like, that's like a heart to heart. Like if we're friends and I love you and I know you and I know that we're both well versed on the concept of therapy, neither one of us are laymen when it comes to the concept of therapy, then it's not an insult. If I say, I think you should see a therapist. But if we've never had that conversation before and you don't know me on that level, or I don't know what you know or what you think therapy is, and if you say, you see me, act out or have one, issue, and you're like, oh, you need a therapist, it's an insult. Because what you're essentially saying is, oh, you need help. And I may need help, but let me decide that.
I've learned that for me, actually telling somebody that I think therapy would help better than me, because somebody who's not, I don't have my degree yet, I don't have my licensure yet, but when you say to somebody, I cannot support you in the way that you need. Here's A, B, C, D.
Right.
That is a better and nicer segue than saying get therapy. Like, I cannot support you in the attributes that you need. Do this, do that.
And that terminology changed how I would feel versus you saying, oh, no, you need it. I'm like, no, I don't need it. I'm good. Can I benefit? Sure. I just threw out some words that benefited me, because I said by going through a therapist, I've learned how to just say, hey, I need a moment. That was a little key benefit that I've learned and absorbed. So do I need it? No, I don't need it, but I benefited. So that terminology would definitely help people in the long run. We're saying, hey, You don't need it, but you might be able to benefit, learn a thing or two about yourself and about how to navigate around the people around you.
Whenever I hear somebody say I'm good, I always say, but you could be better.
Right.
Always. Because that's the first thing that someone will say is like, I don't need therapy, or I'm okay. I'm fine, right? And I'm like, you're fine, but you could be finer.
Yeah.
You're great, but you could be greater, and you'll never know. Because guess what you're not doing? You're not seeking it out. You think because you feel okay, everything's okay. But what about the things that are not okay and you just haven't had that revelation yet because you haven't had time to sit and process that? And that's something that a lot of people don't recognize that therapy does. It gives you that time for that process, for that introspection, so that you can do that shadow work even involuntarily. You might not even know you're doing it, but you're doing it.
It's also humbling from somebody who's telling you to get better advice when they realize that they can't give you that advice. So it's that humbling aspect of, I don't know how to help you, and I may have my things together in this moment, but that doesn't mean I always have this together. But I could tell you, somebody who's more equipped.
So what I've gotten from this conversation is that everybody can benefit from having a therapist.
Everybody
Right.
can benefit and everybody should benefit. And I think that the great thing about a platform, the great thing about being on, We Just Talking, is that people are going to listen to this, and there's going to be some things that they may not have considered. And I'm sure there's going to be a perspective, and they're going to be like, I never thought about it that way. And so my hope is that, we can continue these conversations. And I want to thank everybody who's tuning in so that the conversation can continue. I'm Counselor Charli, and we got
Ryan.
Holiday.
Vivi.
And until next time, you guys.